make them somewhat like more equal.
Okay.
And so we have some questions regarding that kind of thing.
Do you guys know how they're funded right now?
Yeah, we just talked them as is fair enough.
Okay, so how are they funded right now? You tell me.
They're funded as in like each sport based off of like revenue and the amount of participants.
Okay.
Are given like they all have funds already, and so they're given these funds based off of like if a football game has 150 people come to the game or however like 1,000, then all that money doesn't go to the football team, it goes to the school.
Okay.
And then the school gives out the money to who they think would need the money.
Who needs it the most?
Yeah.
Okay, people. Okay, I gotcha. I want to make sure that because that's the way I always thought it was done from what my past, but that's that. Let me shut the door.
That's okay. If you want to, you can.
All right. So go ahead. You can ask me.
So these are kind of like broad questions at first. It's like, with your experience with the football program, would you say you're more funded than other sports?
Are we more funded than other sports? With our equipment and helmets and outfitting a player and stuff, yeah, I would say other sports we would be, just by the nature of the sport, because the cost of a helmet, cost of a shoulder pads, cost of we actually make the kids buy their own girdles now. You can purchase them, but like just those basic things are very expensive. So as far as funded more, yeah, I would say that.
Okay. And then as a teacher being amongst the entire student body, do you believe other sports and activities are underfunded?
Are they underfunded? Yes and no. I think that there's some sports that could use more funding than others. Whereas,
do you have an example?
Maybe, for example, and this gets tough because you could have like baseball, for example, can be an expensive sport with that, with uniforms, buying bats, catcher's equipment, and a lot of people get their own stuff, baseballs and so on. But at the same time, baseball right now doesn't have any way to sell tickets to get into the game, or same with softball, in that sense. So, how do you, make money off of that on a sport that could be expensive with that? So that's kind of where we run into, and that's why, football, because of when it is and the capacity of it, and how many people go, and whether it's they're coming to see their child in the band, or whether it is to watch their kid play, or just to be there. With that, people are still buying tickets to get in to see the game, and that's that funding from there. So whereas, like I said, baseball, softball, they can't really charge for that, or I haven't seen them charge for it. So.
Okay. And then we know football brings money because hundreds of people watch the games and everything. Do you think other sports that don't often have large attendance numbers could be funded differently than they are now?
Trying to think how you'd want to do that. I would tell you that they could be funded differently. I don't know the way to go about it, and I guess from what I've seen previously, that the sports that end up a lot of times making money in the school are normally football, because you can charge to get in, and football has a prime time night. It's Friday, and it's once a week. So and a lot of people want to go to that and see that, and the band and everything. There's a lot of different, organizations happening at that time. So you have that. Soccer, boys and girls soccer, you can charge ticket wise. As far as attendance for that, I'm not sure if they make money or they break even essentially on that. Basketball, as far as popularity of sports we see in culture in the wintertime, that one's always Friday. You have Tuesday, Friday, or Wednesday, Thursday, or Saturday. For the girls. So just the popularity of it versus the actual funding of it. And we're saying that we distribute that equally, across all. Or I should say equally, but they look and see what sports need what. could there be a better idea behind it? Like each sport gets a percentage, like a set amount, because we know that, hey, we know football costs this much on average, and basketball costs this much on average, soccer costs this much on average. And is it based on what each makes? So if you looked at each one separately, could you do it based on how much that they make and how much they need and get an average from that? That'd be another way to look at it, rather than just based on need of that. I don't know if that made any sense, if that was clear, but maybe looking at it that way. So.
And then looking at like Coach Boyle being the head coach, or like Coach Manny in the past, or you specifically, or any of the other coaches, do you guys pay anything out of pocket specifically for the sport to be coaches?
Yeah, but we do. All of our licenses and everything that we do, that we get, costs money. Like every 3 years we have to get a pupil activity license or certificate, and that costs money. With that, you might have to pay for the class itself. So that might range from anywhere from maybe being free. They do offer free, but it might be $20, $25. So the certificate itself, I think that costs like $45. They might have upped it. Some reason $80's even ringing a bell in my mind. I haven't renewed mine. I renewed it last year, but I forget how much it was. You have to take a one-time coaching course, and that's in about the hundreds of dollars that you have to take, about $105 or $110. We have to pay out of pocket to do CPR. That's every 2 years with that, so that class can range from being $12 to $30 or $50. You have to pay for your background check, your FBI check, and CBI check, and that's in the $100 there. So that's out of pocket, and that's not even counting anything that you have to buy for this sport. Now, most of the time, like Coach Boyle or you will buy us like polos. With that, you have to buy your own pants, or you might want to buy your own shoes or something like that. But as far as like polos and jackets, sometimes they're provided through the booster club. He's able to have that, or sometimes you have to get stuff on your own, which I've bought multiple things, whether it's bags or whether it's for me to carry things in, or different warm weather gear, because when you're out, whether it's in track or football, you have to prepare for the weather, or like waterproof clothes. So we do purchase things out of pocket with that. So, but the ones that are those ones I just talked about are things that I want to buy because it'll prepare me for the weather, prepare me for the game, or maybe how I want to look. Like I could get a $2 pair of sunglasses, or I could get a $150 pair of sunglasses, depending on how cool I want to be at that time, right? So you have that. But when it comes down to like your certificates and everything, we never used to have to pay for that because you didn't need any of that, which is fine. But now we do have to pay, and it ends up being expensive to coach. And you also have people that are volunteers; they get paid nothing. They're basically,
and they still have to do all those.
They still have to do all of those. So even if you have somebody volunteering, they're actually paying money to coach you with that. So that's whenever you have a volunteer coach, always keep that in mind, because they're really there for the passion of it too, not that the pay is astronomical for coaching, but you still have some sort of reimbursement in that sense of it. It's just taken out of that pay essentially.
Is there anything specifically that you pay for that you think you shouldn't have to, that should go from the fund?
Like I say, the only thing that really bothers, I don't even want to say bothers, but the thing that I think we could use money for if we wanted to was that all the certificates and certifications, a lot of it could be, if I ever saw money go towards something, it would be that, because that's something that you're wanting to do this job. And it's the same thing with teaching too. We have to pay for a certification of teaching every 5 years, and you have to buy or participate in classes that might be credits towards college. So there's a lot of money that comes out of your pocket, that goes towards your certification. But at the same time, you end up, you get your salary in the end. But it would be nice to not have to pay for it or have those things paid for by something or someone else on that. So that would be something that I would say is our certifications, that if I saw any money go towards something, it would be that, because all coaches have to do it. So something uniform, because like my polo and my cold weather jacket that I have, well, somebody in basketball doesn't need that. So, how could I justify paying for that, the school paying for that, whereas a basketball coach doesn't have to wear that stuff, so maybe he needs a suit or shirt and tie. So that might be cheaper in the end than, like a jacket of some sort, if that makes sense. So, you guys you can ask anything you want.
That was all like the pre-prepared stuff.
Okay. So, I guess if you need any more additional comments, like I could tell you guys about, like, I guess we could say too of, we talk about how sports are funded, and what there are certain sports that are more popular in certain areas than others. Like if you went down to North Carolina right now, they love basketball. How many basketball schools are down there? They have watch parties for basketball games. I know people are participating in March Madness and things right now, but in Ohio, it's not as popular. People will watch basketball and they'll get excited about it, but like the main thing in Ohio that people like is football. It's just kind of a product of where we are and what
being close to Canton.
Right, being close to Canton, and you have a lot of famous football that has a lot of history from here. So people would come out on Friday nights to see different games and just teams with that. Like Mr. Lendeck makes his way around the football world with that in Ohio to see certain games and stuff. Now, and he does go to other like basketball games, whether it's girls basketball or boys basketball in the winter, and he always will make it to all our different sporting events. But he would be somebody that, hey, I want to go see Massillon and Canton play with that, just to go to that game, because it's a good one. Where would somebody want to go see a different sport in that manner? It's just something that's popular that people want to go do, and that sport ends up driving more money, just because it's more desired to see. And a lot of times, we were at a conference the one time, and they were asking about how schools should be funded and money, and one of the things that was on the table was the football team's record. Like, does that matter in your school funding and so on? And other people are saying no to that and so on. But I went and I asked them. I said, listen, Ohio State right now, what's their graduation rate? And nobody could tell me. I said, who's the dean of this college? And nobody could tell me.
Source drive revenue.
All right. So, but then I asked, well, what's Ohio State's record right now? They're undefeated. The Ohio State football team, they're undefeated. Who's the coach? Urban Meyer. Everybody knew that. All right, so this entertainment thing and that thing that people are passionate about a lot of times drives more money, because it is entertainment on that. So if you find those sports, and they tend to bring in more people, they create more money, but that could help out all the other sports, so because you get more people coming in, people get excited about the school, and saying, hey, well, I got more people coming to our school because of whether it's this sports team or that sports team, enrollment's up, so on, and you keep building on top of that. So that's one way to do that. I'm not saying that it's the way, but it's a thought process. So, anything else?
So basically what we're trying to argue is that they are funded, they're funded differently. We know this,
right.
But they're funded in a way where the football team doesn't, as being a player, you don't really have to pay for much.
Right.
You're like, you had to pay to play fee, but then they took that away. So now next year it's going to be like, if you want to play football, step on the field, you can play football.
Right.
Versus like the baseball team has to purchase oftentimes their own like pants and stuff.
Okay.
And so like maybe as in like you would have them do like the football team does, where you have like pants that you reuse every so you get new ones every 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So we're trying to argue that certain sports are like they go about it differently.
Okay. Yeah.
And so like they shouldn't go about it that way.
Right.
I don't know, like if you had any thoughts on like other sports having to pay for things that are not having to pay for in other sports.
So if we were to look at things, and like I said, I haven't done investigation on things, but like are all sport uniforms paid for? So you're saying like the baseball team, do they have to pay for their top jerseys? Or
I'm not sure. All I know is a friend of mine was saying that
they have to pay for their pants.
Right.
Okay. I guess as far as uniforms go and the equipment that you need, I feel like that should be funded for by the school. So, like the track team, I know that we always had track shorts that if you wanted, we would provide to you, or you could buy your own. That was your choice. But we provided the top to you on that tank top. Or the wrestling team, it's provided the equipment like the singlets that you have to wear. All right, that's your required uniform. I think obviously the school should, fund that itself. Should be able to pay for that. But as far where I think it would be tricky is other equipment that's outside of it. So let's say like spikes for football. I don't think that the school should have to pay for spikes because maybe you want your own or different kinds. But maybe is that for wrestling shoes, track spikes, so on. Now, could you argue, could funds be given that way? Because we're spending how much money on a football helmet, all right? And do you need track spikes to run? Yes and no. I mean, you could run in tennis shoes, but would you be as good? Whereas in football, you need the football helmet with that to actually participate and play.
Because that's a law.
Right, you need that, or all the different pads, all the shoulder pads and so on. But yeah, I guess I feel that all the equipment, all the uniforms should be paid for. Now, how to do that, which is your guys' question. So should it be split up? What's the new way did you guys come up with a new way on thinking about how to do this, or?
Not at the moment.
Not yet.
That's like the last step.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're trying to think about what's the best concept. As far as uniforms, I don't know. What do you guys think about fairness of should it be split? Even like one way that you could think about doing this: hey, all the money that all the sports make, you just split it up evenly amongst all the sports. So say the football team generated, let's say it was just like $3,000 that year. Baseball generated maybe $200 because they couldn't have ticket sales and so on, not as many people. So you take all that money and then you split it up evenly amongst the sports. And that's a fair way to do it. Now, will sports like football be able to survive on that? Not necessarily, because you need more equipment for that, or you might need more equipment for this sport or that sport. Because cross country could technically generate a whole lot of money with that, but it's very inexpensive to actually outfit a track athlete. You just need the uniform. You have to pay for officials, right? Where, like, have you guys ever seen like a track invitational as like a real big one, like they have Poland and stuff? They have all these schools from all over the place come, and because they have their 8-lane track and everything that they need for that, and the space, well, how much money do they make on concessions? How much money do they make the other schools pay to come there? So are they making a lot of money on a sport that may not cost that much on that? Whereas in football, it does cost a lot, but you might generate the most revenue. So as far as funding it, you could do it where it's even across the board if you had more things like that. Or you, like we do have now, is that percentage of, all right, well, how much on average does football need in order to survive? Like, so, and how much do they make on average? All right, so do you give them that percentage and try to figure out everybody else? Like, how much does it cost the bowling team? How much does it cost, rifle? How much does it cost? I mean, every sport on average, how much do they spend? How much do they make on that? And then maybe try to meet somewhere in the middle with that. Might be one option.
My whole background on wanting to do this as like our project was like for wrestling. I don't think a lot of people know about this. One of the letter requirements is that you send out 10 letters asking for donations to the program.
Okay.
And you have to prove that you sent them out. You have to bring in a list of names of like who you sent them out to. And I'm not sure. We're gonna interview Coach Zakrashik tomorrow, but from my understanding is he uses a lot of his own money to buy us food for after weigh-ins and food for, like, for instance, one time we went to one of the hotels for one of our meets and we got the tournament ended up finishing late that day. So when we got to the hotel room, all the places were closed to order food because we often, like, he can say, I can get you this, or like with the school money, or you guys can use your own money and order pizza and all this. Well, him, Coach Holbert, I don't know if you know Coach Holbert.
Oh, yeah.
Him, Coach Holbert, and Coach Wall, they all had to go out and buy us food for them, like, on their own. So they came back with, like, a couple subs and, like, chips, and we're like, this is what we could get you guys. I'm sorry. Like, you know what I mean? And so I feel as though he shouldn't have to pay out of pocket.
Okay, yeah.
And, like, for instance, it's not that I disagree with boosters. It's that I just think that the fact that the boosters are separate from the school is, like, I feel like it shouldn't be that way. I feel like it should all come from the school. Mm-hmm. And, like, the parents' organization should be involved in the school, not separate.
I gotcha.
And so, like,
that makes sense, yeah.
I don't think that it should have taken $10,000 of, like, separate fundraising to get new mats for the school. I think the new mats should have been paid for by the school. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And that's in your investigation, you have to come across things about, funding for, like right now they're trying to do the football field, like turf, which none of that, or a lot of that is private donations. I don't know how much is given by the booster club or I should say the school or booster club or so on, but I know a lot of it are private donations, whether it's through the booster club or through a separate entity to do that or get it sponsored. And that's kind of the same concept as, getting mats or like a new baseball field or, whatever it might be. I know and heard of that a lot of times the school will give part of the money or the booster club will give part of the money. So I don't want to be quoted on the sense that saying the school will give money, right. But the booster club or athletics will meet halfway, to do this. Like, hey, if you raise this much, the athletic funds will be able to match this much on that. But yeah, as far as people buying, coaches buying food out of pocket or equipment out of pocket for players. Yeah, I've seen that and done that as well. I guess that's something that just kind of goes with, being a coach and caring for your players that, you don't would think twice about it a lot of times where, we've had players that can't afford spikes. So how do they get spikes?
Right.
So do you do it as a coach? Can you ask through for the boosters? What's that process that you could go through? So, would funding like that, maybe somebody that's on free and reduced lunch or somebody, would they be able to qualify to get funding from somewhere, whether it's a school or boosters or someone, maybe for things like that. So, that's a good reason to do this and have this initiative. I'm trying to think of anything else that I could give you guys that would be beneficial in your thing.
mean, I kind of did this because, like, I'm in band, and we're required to go to band camp every year.
Right.
And it costs almost $300 out of our own pockets.
Right.
Like, the band doesn't pay for anything like that. Right. And most of our instrument... Yeah, and it's a requirement. Like, you cannot be in band if you don't go. And, like, our instrument repairments, my clarinet's broken on me a few times. You have to buy your own instrument most of the time. The school only has a limited amount. And it costs about $50 to get it repaired every time. And, like, the school doesn't help us with that. Even the band boosters doesn't help us with that. So, I mean, the band gets almost no money from the school from what we've been told by Rezabec.
Okay.
So, it's just, I mean, band is considered an academic course and an activity.
Right.
So, it's just, it's, I mean, and the band, we create revenue, but at the same time, it's, like, we don't pay for our no one pays to come to our concerts.
Right.
So we also don't get as much money as, like, other sports.
Right. Other activities do, and that's something that I'm not as aware of, like, at, like, the football games, you have the marching band. Mm-hmm. So there's the band, you have the, I keep wanting to say cafeteria, the concessions. Okay? So you have, like, band concessions, which that's money that's made for by the band. So that revenue would go towards something, whether it's with marching band or someone. Do you guys have to do fundraisers throughout the year?
Yeah, we have to do a lot of fundraisers because, like I said, everything is paid for either from the band boosters, and a lot of it's from our own pockets.
Right.
So that $300 requirement every year for band camp takes a lot out of us. And they also, like, band, we go on a lot of trips for, like, playing. Like, we're going to Disney next year to play at Disney World, I believe it is. And, like, that's almost $1,000.
Right.
And we don't get any help from...
Right. So you have to get that and raise that. I gotcha.
Yeah.
The booster.
Where, like, if sports would travel, the school will help them.
Right.
But the band, we have to pay that $1,000 or that $300.
Right. On that. Let's see. Now, that's the other, I know some money goes to transportation for sports, busing. So you got to pay bus driver, you got to pay for gas, in the bus. Some things too, as far as, like a bus taking somebody to, like, the wrestling team might need maybe, I don't know, one bus to get from place to place.
We use the vans a lot too. But since Coach Eric retired, we only have one certified driver.
Okay.
So
you don't have, so you still have to pay drivers and, gasoline. Like track, I know a lot of times they might use 3 buses. So you have track, you're paying for 3 bus drivers to get to a meet, and are we making any money at that meet? As far as, is the track team making any money? So can you, base it off their percentage of, they have maybe 1 meet a year or 2 meets, home meets, in which they can charge and make money off of. So can we give, basically, I guess what the big issue is here is we have a lot of kids that participate in different things, and the money that sports make or the band makes or so, it doesn't seem like, as far as it's distributed as needed, is what you were telling me. And I'm not sure of the best way to distribute it, because you don't want people not to go out for activities or sports, right? You want more people to be involved. But you're right, it does cost money with that. And there are some things that cost money that don't generate revenue. And there are things that generate revenue that don't cost money. And there are ones that generate revenue that cost money on there. Where, like the band, where you guys generate revenue by bringing people into the football games. You have, the football parents, you have the students, you had the band parents, and people coming to watch, and the whole thing. And as far as travel with you guys, there's a lot of buses that.
Yeah, we have over 200 kids.
Right, so you have a lot of buses that, and a lot of bus drivers paying for that. So revenue there. On, I was going to ask you something else too about that. I was curious on. What was it? When you guys, your uniforms, are those provided, or do you have to?
The uniforms, part of the payment for the uniforms is included in our band camp.
Okay.
So if we have to pay, I think last year was about $270.
Okay.
About 30 of that is for the uniform, but like
Okay.
the dry cleaning and everything.
All right, to do that.
Yeah.
That was I was seeing that too, because I was seeing if that fell along with, the school should be able to provide uniforms for its athletes, and they don't have to pay anything for those. Because I'm trying to figure out if do you have to buy pants, or do you have to buy your a hat, or do you have to buy? So where's that all come into play?
I may be wrong, but aren't the band uniforms the same ones they've had for like a long time?
I joined band late, so I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that we got newer uniforms, at least probably within the last 10 years. And this part of band, this is an academic part, but like our music,
Right.
we get 6 songs for marching band, 3 songs for our winter concert, 3 songs for districts, and 3 new songs for what's the next one? Spring. And like the band boosters pay for all of those songs. Like the school doesn't help us with any of that.
Are the band boosters separate from the athletic
Yes.
boosters?
Yes.
Okay.
And from my understanding, it was band and then athletic, and then at one point there was football, but they got in trouble for being separate from the other athletics, so they shut that down.
Yeah, they just within the past year and a
They were
half,
the football backers.
they kind of assimilated it into all the ones, and which basically, if you have your own separate booster club, I mean, you could generate all kinds of revenue,
Right.
whether in a lot of different ways, and it's not, as monitored by the school.
You can keep it in-house and in sport.
Right. So it's obviously beneficial to that sport. It's not always the best thing for everybody to do that. And I mean that, could you be doing something with the money that's not as far as a paper trail, I mean, would be, I don't want to say legal, but could be a little shady. Could you be doing that? Yeah, technically you could if, you don't have everything that matches up. So it could be beneficial for the sport, but it could be bad for all the other sports. It could be bad for, the culture of the schools as well on there. And you guys picked a really good subject, because there are sports and things that, like I said, drive a lot of popularity, and there's a lot of people that go to and they drive up revenue with that. And then there's ones that don't, but you still want them. You still want to have them.
Like in my interview with Coach Z, he said that the biggest thing for wrestling is it's one of the with our traveling, it's one of the most expensive sports.
Right.
And brings in some of the least revenue because people aren't interested in it anymore.
Right.
But at the same time, people are interested in football, but but last time they were AAC champs was 2017, right? Before that, it was 2011, I believe.
I think we were in. It might have been in 2013 or 2014. But that was that.
With wrestling, a lot of people don't go. They've sent, I think since 2012, they've sent 7 guys to the state tournament, and had Jordan placed, DB won, Matt went this year, and then Chris went, and then Brandon went twice. So, and then they have the Bell brother, that wrestled, like won sectionals, went to states. So it's like there's a lot of success too, where they're not really earning anything back based off their success.
Right.
They had Coach Beeson, as controversial as his exit was or whatever. I don't know the story. He had a winning program. Mm-hmm. Coach Z has a winning program. Coach Eric has been here since he started, since he left his old job and he started teaching in the 90s. He's been here with the wrestling team through that. He was the head middle school coach. So like we have a good program and a good program with a lot of history to it, but they're not really receiving equal like backing from that.
Right. And that's where it comes into play again, where that, say you do have, let's even compare it to if we just did like Ohio State as far as college sports. So, you know, how much revenue Ohio State football brings in with the band, with the games on Saturdays,
right.
And stuff. Millions with that. And if you compare it to their other programs, like, you know, does Ohio State basketball bring in more revenue, or does Ohio State wrestling bring in more revenue?
Wrestling does.
All right. So
I would think.
All right. So I'm not sure
right.
on that, but like if you compared Ohio State football to those ones, it's football, because that's that popularity thing that's driving that that people want to see for whatever reason. Right there, where we kind of run into the problem is that even if you said Ohio State wrestling was super successful and stuff, well, you know, it's good that it is, but when you talk about getting more stuff and
right.
it comes through, you know, revenue of what people want to see. A great example is who we have is Vinny Mari. All right, he is one of our greatest runners and athletes
to ever walk through this.
Yes. Now, I don't know how much money that the cross country team has made or even the track team has made coming just to see him run, let's say. But would you say that I'd have to look, but the football schedule, the 10 games that we had this year might have made more money than what people coming to see Vinny run, because of just the situation of, can you charge people to get in to the track meet? Did we have one home track meet? Do we have any invitationals? So do people know about Vinny, the exposure of it? Because our Mahoning Valley does the football preview all the time. They put it out in the paper.
It's all over the news.
It's all over the news. But do they do anything with track? Do they do anything with, you know, in basketball they show the highlights a lot. Do they do anything with wrestling as far as a wrestling preview? And like I said, the popularity of something ends up driving more money. And I'm not saying that's the way things should be.
It's just how it is right now.
It's just how it is, fortunately and unfortunately.
So like right now they're also trying to like push wrestling in the area, because the Eastern Ohio Wrestling League has like the hardest wrestling in the state roughly. They said I think it was 41 guys that wrestled in the EOWL tournament in January went to states. 41 guys.
Right.
And so they also have, like, we wrestled Canfield for the second year in a row in the mall. And the Canfield Austintown match was on TV. Yeah. It was the game of the week, not a basketball game that had it on as wrestling. Right. And so I feel like it's growing, but it's not, like, still not right.
It's up to that level where everybody watches it. And that's why a lot of times when I'll ask about, hey, you know, how many people watch, you know, in class, just taking polls, like how many people watch football or know this or watch, you know, soccer or what, just kind of get the popularity scope that a lot of people like to play it or they like to the sport, but they may end up saying, hey, well, I watch Ohio State football, or hey, I watch the Cleveland Browns, or in the end, all be all that they do. Not saying that everybody does, but, you know, even people that are wrestlers or soccer players or, you know, will gravitate to a certain sport or liking, and that's what that generates that revenue. So, as far as you guys picked a good topic as far as, you know, trying to figure out, you know, what's the best way to fund things. And it might I I was always under the impression, it might have been different when I was growing up, is that all the money that was made was by the sports ticket sales was just split evenly. So the amount of kids that you got to play for football, it was so much money per kid that played. All right, so let's just say it was like $100 per kid that you got to play in your sport. It didn't matter if it was football or wrestling or so on. You got that. It was equal across the board, but all the boosters, football had its own separate booster club. They're the ones that funded things like do you need new weight machines, or do you need new this or that, or uniforms, or whatever it might be. That was always my impression, but what I'm getting now is you're saying that they look at each sport and they divide it by what sport needs what. Okay, and it's not based on the revenue that they make.
Well, it's mixed. She said.
Oh, it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I was just
we interviewed her before we came down here today.
Could think a much better person to interview than me, but is there?
Your information's actually been better, helpful, wise.
Really?
Than our other interviews.
Mr. Rezebek, it seemed like this is off the record. It seemed like because we have this recorded. It was almost like he was against our cause, and it was like, oh, I don't need help from these kids. We're funded fine. Basically, it's what it felt like.
Okay.
And he was like, we don't get any funding. We're academics.
Yeah,
blah,
because
blah, 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 blah.
I mean, like I said, with band, a lot of it comes from our own pockets.
I got you.
So I'm guessing the band directors don't really pay for anything on their own because with the band boosters and us, but we have to pay hundreds of dollars every year for stuff that we need.
Like you said, he's paid out of pocket for food, right? Mr. Rezebek said he's never paid out of pocket for food. I work at Arby's. Every Friday, they come in and they order 250 classics. Who pays for the classics?
Yeah.
A mom comes in with a card.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I've seen the at the games this stuff a lot of time, and there's a I want to call it when you guys have break and stuff and you get something to eat there. Now there are, and like I said, with the money wise, like I know that we have pregame meal that is normally before football games, so we'll have it on like a Thursday night.
I miss those.
They are delicious. They're
great.
Now, back in the day when my mother was, she would go out to restaurants and get the stuff donated. So she went out on her own, and she was in the football bag, and she would listen, would you donate pasta and meatballs to the football team? And they would say, yeah, a lot of times. So it was free. Now I know recent years that they've had to pay for different meals and things, like say that night we had pasta and chicken with that. Well, I imagine that we had to pay for the chicken. They just didn't donate the chicken. So that comes out of the football fund of what that right. is for pre-game meal. So that's something that is there. So that's what gives me the insight that there's a fund that is giving money that is not as equally distributed because it may be based on what you're getting and what you're doing. So, football coaches, as far as contractually, I think we're the highest paid coaches as far as assistants. With that, and with that being said, we do put in a lot of time as far as when you look at 2-a-days and look at the games and Saturdays and stuff. And I'm not, like I said, downplaying any other organization or sport, but I know the amount of time that I spend in football compared to track or baseball, and the hours are very different on that. And so that compensation for football coaches, reflects.
I know the wrestling coaches have 3 contracts.
Yeah.
Coach Z is the only one with a full contract. The other 2 are split amongst the other coaches.
Yes.
And that doesn't count the ones that are volunteer.
Right.
And Mr. Eric did the math. This is coming from Coach Z. That they get somewhere around, if they were to take all the hours that they're with us, all the 2-hour practices, the 3-hour driving, the 9-hour tournaments, they make somewhere around 12 cents an hour.
Yeah, I've always been scared to do that myself on that, but
do the math.
Yeah, I don't want to even think about it. But those coaches too, as you know, a lot they do it because they
Right.
love you guys, they love the sport itself, and that's what they're in it for. But yeah, I like this topic. I know I keep saying that. I do, but
I said it too when I first talked to him about it.
It's just something that it's complicated, and it would be, and it's something that's out of people's control in a lot of senses. That hey, like we said, Vinny Mari is a really great athlete, but we don't have a way that we could generate a lot of revenue off the ton of people coming to see him. So if we had Baker Mayfield as the quarterback at Howland High School and stuff, and people get to see him in high school, think of all the people that
Mike Tricomi.
Yeah, ton of people came to see me. Yeah, but like say you had him, think of all the people that come to the game to see the band, and they buy stuff from the band booster concession, and they're at the game, and they're buying from all the ticket sales and everything that go in to it, and then because that's just the popular sport in that season, all right, and then how much revenue that generates on there. And there was something that years back when, and just to give you an example, if you need it, and I don't know if this helps at all, but we had the conference championship game. It was the boys soccer game right over here in Howland. They, I forget how much money that they made that night, but there was a 7th grade football game and 8th grade football game that same, like the night before with that. They made more money off the 7th and 8th grade football game, which the middle school football games, rather than the MAC championship game between Howell and Poland at that. Just more people came to watch that because of that popularity, and whether the kids were younger and parents were all pumped up to see that. So how do you split it evenly and at the same time still reward the sports that are generating that and the organizations, because part of the band is generating money with the football game. And that's what I'm saying is that it should be equal in a sense, but there should also be some backing and reward as well with that. And how do you equate success too? Is success saying that, well, people just come see the football team and the band, that's what you most, so even though we're losing that year or we're 5-5 with that, but the wrestling program and Vinny and the track team they're Trumbull County champs, but the band football team made 10 times that just because of the nature of it. So yeah, you guys will have to think of a way that can you still reward teams that are making more money, but do you reward success too, or should that success try to go into the popularity of that sport? Yeah, this is good.
Complicated.
It is complicated. You guys took a very
Mrs. Saranac said a lot of things I feel like I went going about it wrong, like trying to change it versus just trying to understand it with her.
Okay.
Where she basically explained how everything is set up and that it works.
I see.
And her thing is my goal is to have the kid enjoy the sport, not to make it equal.
I gotcha. That is always been the initiative of the athletics program, is to make sure that you're having fun with the sport, you're enjoying the sport, because we're you're not gonna end up in professional athletics. Majority of kids, that's not what it's about. It is to enjoy and have fun and so on. I guess in my mindset is just to generate more revenue. How do you do that? Is there a way to fund sports that one sport will feed off or benefit another? Like this year, I know Girard and Hubbard played each other in football, and their tickets were it was jam-packed there. It was sold out on that. And, because Girard had a really good football team, Hubbard had a good football team with that. And, did that one game eclipse, anything that we ever made as far as all this 10-game season here or basketball season and so on, it might have, I'm not sure of the actual money, but if, say you had that and you kept doing that so on, that might benefit all the other, activities in sports if you're able to distribute it equally and distribute it in a sense that, all right, this sport made this much money and so on, and it's bringing in more people and more viewership and interest into the school with that. But yeah, that's that. So you guys have anything else good? Or? No. I hope I helped.
You did.
Yeah,
a little bit. Okay. I hopefully too. I didn't want to be overly controversial on anything like that. But
we'll use nothing.